afternoon, everyone, and welcome to What the Why, one of RVN's still newish television shows with Barbara Ann. Our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured things out. Now, maybe you happen to be sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck. Our guests all have one thing in common with you. They felt similarly at some point in their life, and they decided to change it. And today's guest is very unique, yet no exception to that group. Our guest today is Cynthia Adinig. Am I pronouncing that correct, Cynthia? Is it Adinig? Okay, I'm not sure if she can hear me. Can you hear me, Cynthia?
Yes, you can.
Is it Adinig? It is.
Yes.
Okay. Cynthia is joining us from Northern Virginia. Cynthia is a marketing specialist turned long COVID advocate and equity policy advisor. She pivoted to being a long COVID and MECF, and we're going to talk about what that is in a little bit, advocate after her March 2020 quote-unquote mild COVID-19 infection, which for so many of us, and yes, that includes us as in me, led to severe disability and life-threatening illnesses. Due to her uniquely severe long COVID symptoms, Cynthia had to seek care at local emergency rooms over 30 times because of a long COVID symptom that causes her to have allergic reactions to all food and water. This symptom resulted in multiple hospitalizations and, importantly, her realization that there are severe inequities in the U.S. healthcare system where often the least able to advocate for themselves are the most affected. In September 2020, as my long COVID symptoms kick in, and I'm tripping over words, after being threatened with arrest at a hospital emergency room while seeking medical help during an episode of dangerously low oxygen and high heart rate, Cynthia decided never again and became a long COVID advocate so people from non-majorities and underinvested communities would receive proper care in the future. She worked alongside other patient advocates to guide legislative language for the bipartisan COVID-19 Long Haulers Act and spoke at the official press conference alongside the bill's sponsors, Representatives Beyer and Bergman. She also met with Senator Tim Kaine and Representative Ayanna Pressley's teams about their long COVID legislations, and she's since met multiple times with NIH, National Institutes of Health directors, to discuss issues concerning long COVID and health equity in research, and she's worked with researchers even on long COVID studies and trials. Cynthia was co-leader of the very first BIPOC, which stands for Black Indigenous People of Color, Long COVID and ME-CFS support group, and she is developing a BIPOC equity consulting agency with several other long COVID advocates. Cynthia is also well known in the long COVID community for working to intervene in real time to help patients access proper care globally. And she wrote a digital emergency room guide for long haulers of color to increase their access to care and other resources. She's been featured in Time Magazine, Washington Post, Bloomberg News, the National Journal, Yahoo News, Today, USA Today, Newsy, and more. She's a cast member of Long Haul Voices, a long COVID and ME-CFS documentary. She's a board member of Solve ME and Whale of a Tale, an advisory board member of Consily, and she informally advises other long COVID nonprofit organizations such as COVID-19 Long Haulers Advocacy Project, which I am also involved in along with Cynthia as part of the national, really now turned international Long COVID Alliance. Cynthia's 7-year-old son, Adinig, also suffers from long COVID. Yet despite all that was happening during the height of Cynthia's long COVID health challenges and his own, he became a Mensa member at only 5 years of age. Aiden is internationally known as a prodigy in math and chess and is homeschooled by Cynthia, health permitting. He's also beyond adorable. and probably should be featured on my show one of these days. So without further ado, please welcome Cynthia Adinig to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sure Aiden, the cameraman, would love to have his own separate interview about his experience with long COVID and what he has on his mind as goals for the world and other communities. He's really passionate about, surprisingly and not surprisingly, about like climate change and inequity of other kids from other countries. So he's a very interesting 7-year-old, and he gives me a run for my money, and I'm so proud to be his mom, and I fought really, really hard to be here today as a mom and push and really live through long COVID so that I can be his mom for as long as I really can.
Which is awesome. And hey, this is diverse leaders from all walks of life. So far, our youngest leader's been 18. Who's to say we want to have a 7 or 8-year-old? Because they are the future, and they definitely have a story to tell. Mm-hmm. And once upon a time, you yourself were in that 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old category. And you know, none of us ever thought we'd be looking at the kinds of things that we're looking at today when we were, young. And so, what is it? And I ask this question of everybody, what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
So I wanted to be an environmental scientist. I wanted to backpack throughout the most remote spaces like New Guinea and go and look for different species that are suspected to be extinct and see if they really are extinct, or discover some new species by going really deep into some untraveled, unexplored spaces in like Australia and New Guinea and those kind of spaces.
Oh, wow. Which is interesting because you are exploring in a whole different way. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I mean, it's still science. So science is science, and I think because I had that love of science and understanding of different experiments, and I think that's really how it helped me to guide my own care and survive, because I was able to see what was working for me. I was able to see what was working for others. Far before the research ever confirmed it, I was able to really grasp some data from what we were seeing in the groups in the early days and say, okay, I really should try, Pepsid AC before the research came out and said we should try it, or I really should consider asking about, my doctor to track my D-dimer before the publication came out about the microclotting. And so I really, and I also, my hair, I didn't lose my hair at all to long COVID. In fact, it's longer than it's ever been. And so I've been doing like little experiments with my hair along the way, like little sections. And so I'm currently writing a guide to keeping your hair with long COVID based off of my experiments that I've done over the past 2 years with my own hair. So.
Which is awesome, because I was one of the people who did experience some hair loss, and found different things that work, that help. And it's growing back, so it's tons of different lengths right now. But the struggle is real, and for women especially, it's really challenging.
It was really interesting watching it, because it was one of my biggest fears as someone who experienced severe nutrient deficiency from my allergies to all food and going into starvation several times. I just knew I was going to have aggressive hair loss because of that, but that didn't happen. And so I was like, maybe there's something else happening here that I can explain why my journey, as someone who should experience the most of it other than the other long haulers who can still eat a nutritious diet and have a bunch of supplements, why I still was not experiencing that. Even when I declined to the point where I was losing 5 pounds a week, I still did not lose my hair. So
yes, so let's talk about this term. So we're both part of a support group which is run by the person who actually coined the term, long hauler, Amy Watson. And let's talk about your COVID journey. We both were sick around the same time, and so many parallels, but we're here to talk about you. And so how did your journey in COVID and your why for being here today?
I felt like I got it's like being hit by a car and never being out in the street. That's what long COVID felt like to me. I was just having the best time as an introvert, being excited about the shutdowns, as a person who juggled multiple things and had a busy schedule, was always volunteering and homeschooling and all sorts of things. When the world stopped in March, I was like, finally. It was the first vacation I was able to take, a real one. Probably 5 years, probably 5 years. And so I was like, yes, I finally get the video game and I get to read and I get to bake. I was so excited. And then I started feeling like weird, but like a light cold weird. And my son at the same time was like, I think he was vomiting and he was tired. And I was like, he never gets sick. And there's no way that he could have gotten sick and I got sick at the same time that there was a shutdown and a pandemic. So I knew it was COVID, even though I didn't have any cough, any shortness of breath, any classic COVID symptoms. No one, neither me nor my son had. And so I knew what I knew was COVID. They denied us testing, and I got over it quickly. He got over it quickly in a couple of days. I went on. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm just one of those people who, we get COVID, I'm fine. And then fast forward 2 months in there on Mother's Day, when I went to have my son, I'm a foodie.
Okay.
So I had prepared like my Mother's Day meal for a long time. It was like a pound of shrimp that I was not sharing. And I was having fresh baked banana bread, and I'm a fantastic baker. Fresh out of the oven, perfect crisp, moist on the inside. My son had just went to sleep. I was going to watch Frozen 2 because he's a nerd and doesn't like Disney Pixar stuff like most kids, so I have to watch it alone. And I was about to settle in for the night, and then suddenly, like a ton of bricks, heart racing, throats tied. I couldn't even swallow food that was in my mouth. I was dizzy. I could just hear my heart pounding in my ears. It was so scary. I honestly thought I was having a heart attack. I thought maybe I was having an allergic reaction. But I was like, an allergic reaction doesn't make my heart feel crazy.
Right.
It make me want to pass out. It was just the most conflicting experience I have ever had of any sort of reaction to anything. And I went to the ER. They were like, oh, it's probably an allergy. I'm like, I literally just ate a copious amount of Olive Garden shrimp a week ago because it's my favorite food.
And you were fine then.
I could have developed an allergy that severe with the amount of shrimp that I eat regularly, and just overnight. It just wasn't possible. And so they also were saying, well, maybe it's anxiety. And so that happened a few times over the weeks, and they kept saying it was a different food, and each time they're like, oh, we think it's an allergy and anxiety. And I'm like, I'm not allergic to multiple foods in a severe way over the span of 1 month. That's crazy. And so I started trying to see a doctor, but that first wave, all the specialists, they were not even taking they were seeing no one. And so the only thing I could do was get virtual visits, and that's not helpful.
No.
Have an invisible illness.
So we're going to hold that thought right there, because we're going to come back and talk about the road that you are now on. We're going to take a brief commercial break. And more with Cynthia and what is about to happen as her long COVID continues to worsen. Welcome back to What the Buy, and our guest today, Cynthia Adinig, and she is a national advocate for COVID and MECS. And she is telling us about her experience as she is rapidly running into challenge after challenge after challenge with being diagnosed correctly with long COVID, because at the time, actually, there was no acknowledgement that long COVID was even a thing, something that so many of us that have dealt with this encountered. So Cynthia, let's pick up where we left off. So you're seeing specialists by Zoom, which you're right, is useless in so many instances as it relates to this. There's definitely a place for telemedicine, but they didn't know what they were doing. And the guidance was horrible.
Yeah. Telemedicine was terrible. I was wasting away. Someone told me my symptoms were all from dehydration. I'm like, how can I be dehydrated in my house going nowhere? And even like the cardiologist I saw, like he didn't say anything about POTS, or he wasn't even concerned at all. It's like, it's a little high. It's in the 120s. It should be fine. There's nothing wrong about that. So not being able to see someone in person, them see me declining and seeing those moments of the brain fog and the confusion and the weakness where I'm too weak to pick up a bottle of water, or to walk. I got to the point where I ended up in a wheelchair because I was so weak. My muscles atrophied. I think I went 6 weeks without a full meal. And so I developed life-threatening illnesses, complications because of the starvation and dehydration from after I got to the point of reacting to water, which is a few months into it, is when I started getting dehydrated and being in the ER like every 3 days. And they treated me as if I had anorexia sometimes. They treated me as if it was, I had bipolar. They told me, of course, it was anxiety, panic attacks. I was telling them there's zero chance. I'm a foodie. There's no chance that happen. And so I was in the hospital and alone in that first wave, and I was dying. I knew I was dying. I couldn't recognize my own face, and there was no visitors in the first wave, so I'm alone, hooked up to machines, heart monitor, and IVs in both arms. And my sister, who had passed from chronic illness years ago, came to me in a dream. And I just felt so comforted there. It was the day for my endoscopy, and I was really scared. And I told myself, I'm never going to let this happen to anyone else. It was so isolating and terrifying to not know why you're dying and not know any potential solution and to how to live. And I really was making my own funeral arrangements. I was like, I was giving people my passwords, my sister my passwords. I was really, setting up my son for his IQ test while in the hospital, because I just knew the writing was on the wall, the amount of weight I was losing. And the lack of care that I was getting, that I was clearly going to die. And I said, if I have a chance, just a tiny chance of living, I'm going to make sure no one ever experiences this again, especially women of color, because I know there's some who slipped through the cracks and we don't know their names, and they died unnecessarily in that first wave especially. And I've been working ever since to make sure we start solutions. So as soon as I got cognitive abilities back, I started writing policy. I started writing policies. This is the problem. What is the solution? I was racking my brain before I could even walk, to walk again, to start writing these solutions. I said, if I ever get one chance of talking to a member of Congress, I'm going to have this ready for them, not just the problem, but the solution. And so when I got the chance to work on the long COVID legislation, I was invited to tell my story, done by our team, and allowed to give my input on what should go in the legislation. They actually was like, yeah, we think it's a great idea, and puts those line items in there.
And then you were off and running.
Yes, it's been that way ever since. I've worked on, I think, every single long COVID legislation except for one. And then I have also, of course, testified in front of Congress about my experience with racism, especially the experience where I was slated to be given Narcan for my long COVID symptoms.
Yeah, and this is really important.
Passed 2 drug tests, and also because no other hospital drug tested me for long COVID symptoms except for the one. And it was the same hospital that threatened to have me arrested when my heart rate was extremely high and my oxygen was dangerously low. And I can only imagine I know my brain damage that I got from the hypoxia, the lack of oxygen, was due to that racially biased incident where they kicked me out of the hospital by security. They rolled me out in a wheelchair. It was,
and as someone who had a less, I had a less severe experience, but I had a doctor tell me I had no business being there. I was wasting his time. I needed to get out of the emergency room while I'm literally falling over with hypoxia, which for those who don't know is when you are not absorbing enough oxygen from your blood. And they call it happy hypoxia, which is such a mislabel for it, because it's actually very severe. And it's very hard because your blood oxygen saturation can be jumping up and down, up and down, up and down within seconds of itself. And people don't believe you, even when you have pictures and video, in your case, of your blood oxygen fluctuating like crazy, your heart rate fluctuating like crazy. Now, you mentioned something called POTS, and you kind of touched a little bit on it, but for our audience that doesn't know what that is, what is POTS and what are some of the symptoms? Because that was one of the things that's affected you and your son.
Yes, yes. So POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and it is a part of dysautonomia. So when your autonomic system is no longer regulated, then you have a whole host of problems throughout your entire body. It affects blinking, swallowing, breathing. It can affect your ability to regulate your temperature, sensitivity to light and sound. And the trademark symptom that both me and my son have are the heavy legs from the blood pooling to your legs. So kind of you get that like either cinder block feeling in the bottom of your feet, or sometimes it's that same sensation as if when you get out of a pool, and your legs feel really, really heavy. But imagine that every day, all day. That's what POTS leg heaviness feels like. And it's what causes the high heart rate, because your body's working really, really, really hard to get actual blood pumping to your heart. And
I mention that because I talk to so many people, as you do, that don't even realize that symptoms that they're exhibiting could very well be connected to COVID infections that they had, even mild COVID infections. And so there may be people out there that are experiencing some of these things that are going to learn just from your explanation of what that is, and they'll say, oh my gosh, that's me. That doesn't mean everything that's happening to them is COVID related, but so many people just have no idea. And the projections are very significant. We've heard everything from 1 in 8 to 1 in 4 are going to develop permanent long-term issues as a result of COVID. But you were determined not to be a statistic. So you fought your way out of that wheelchair.
I'm working really hard with different researchers that are developing different diagnostic testing, they're trying to do equitable studies to make sure all communities are represented, and doing even clinical trials like repackaging either drugs that are used for other things and trying to get it approved for long COVID use, or creating new combinations to create therapies to help with long COVID symptoms and getting people back to a good quality of life.
So where do you go from here? And what can all of us do to change this narrative that still needs so much changing?
Wow, that's a good question. I think we're definitely having an issue with legislation because of the tight House and Senate and Congress. So we're having a really tough time getting legislation passed in the House, and especially the Senate. So I really think it's going to be the local battles that we're going to be doing more winning. So you can still go to your House and Senate on a state level and try to lobby to have them have hearings on long COVID, or to have those meetings with those legislators, see if they'll take those meetings with you and tell your story to them. A lot of times I tweet them. I was able to get a hold of Ayanna Presley's team by tweeting them constantly. And I was able to get a meeting with them. And so do not discount the power of social media. Social media is so helpful. But I really think at this point we're going to have to go straight for the hospital networks. We're going to have to start teaching doctors directly how to diagnose and see what and even treat long COVID. It's really up to us from more of a local and state level at this point.
So believe it or not, we're at time. And so I was totally serious. There's so much more to the story and other things that you're involved in. So I definitely want to have you back to talk more about this very important topic.
Absolutely.
And
maybe Aiden the ham sandwich could come and tell his experience with his long COVID. He
that would
actually was in a long COVID PSA with other kids. So
that would be
fantastic.
fantastic.
With long COVID it really concerns him, like when he doesn't see kids wearing masks, being careful.
Yeah, definitely. Next time we have you on, we got to have him. So thank you. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Probably on my website, www.cynthiaadinig.com. It's just my first and my last name. Send me a message through there. I answer every single message that I get. I'm a really good space for resources. If you need resources of any kind, because I do so much of this work, I usually can point a patient in a certain direction to try to get whatever it is that they need to whether it's just hope of, a listening ear, or if it's actually like, financial assistance. I really try to make sure I have things available to help people practically where they're at today.
Awesome. So thank you again. Now, regarding next week, our guests are Michael Kenny and Desiree Bear Kenny, the team behind Kenny Protective Agency. They'll be talking about their firm's work as self-protection specialists in personal safety, self-defense for children, teens, adults, seniors, real estate agents, and security training for business owners. Suffice to say, you really do not want to miss what they or any of our upcoming guests will be sharing about how they, like Cynthia, figured out their individual whys. As a reminder, What the Why airs on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 3:30 p.m. on Mondays at Eastern Daylight Time. It's also available on demand and on Roku shortly after the episode airs, usually within a day or two. And always remember, whether you are looking to make changes in your life or career, no matter how big or small, please join us again for more inspirational and informative conversations with people such as Cynthia, who were able to make changes in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, and fight their fears and find their purpose and live it.